August 9th, 1979, Raymond Washington, the man who co-founded the Crips, was shot and killed in a drive-by on 64th Street in South Central Los Angeles. He was 25 years old. Washington had many things: a street fighter, a founder, a man who genuinely believed that the gang he built could unify rather than destroy his community. And this is the part that changes everything. He was the only man in the entire Crip world who was actively trying to stop Crip sets from going to war with each other. The moment he died, that effort died with him. What followed in the next 12 months was not simply more gang violence. It was a complete restructuring of the criminal landscape of South Central Los Angeles, a fracture so deep, so permanent, so total that it is still the foundation of every gang war happening in California right now. And it all ran through one conflict: the Rollin 60s Neighborhood Crips and the Eight Tray Gangster Crips. Two sets, same city, same origin. And the war between them forced every single Crip gang in Los Angeles to choose a side forever. This is that story. Build the world to understand what happened in 1979. You have to understand what South Central Los Angeles looked like in the years before it. The Crips, founded in 1969 by Raymond Washington and Stanley Tookie Williams, had grown faster than anyone, including its founders, had anticipated. What started as a loose alliance of two street crews had, within a decade, become the dominant gang presence across enormous stretches of Los Angeles. Dozens of sets, thousands of members, territory stretching from the beaches of West LA to the industrial corridors of the East Side. But size created a problem that neither Washington nor Williams had solved. The Crips were not one organization. They never had been. They were a collection of individual sets, each with its own leaders, its own territory, its own internal culture, connected by a name, a color, and a loose sense of brotherhood that became thinner the further you got from the original membership. And within that loose structure, rivalries had been building. Specific blocks against specific blocks. Specific sets with specific grievances. Small fires that Washington, through force of personality and genuine authority, had been managing, keeping contained, preventing from becoming something larger. When Raymond Washington died in August 1979, those fires had no one left to manage them. The two sets, the Rollin 60s Neighborhood Crips, claimed territory in the Jefferson Park area of South Central 59th to 67th Street, roughly centered on Hoover. They were a relatively young set by 1979, still building their reputation, still establishing their place in the hierarchy of South Central gang politics. The Eight Tray Gangster Crips, the 83 gangsters, claimed territory just a few blocks away, centered around 83rd Street and Hoover. They were older, more established, with a reputation that had been built over years of violent enforcement of their territory. Two Crip sets. Different philosophies, different generations of leadership, and crucially geography, close enough that conflict was not just possible, but structurally likely. The specific incident that ignited the war between them is documented in gang history. In the autobiography of Monster Cody Scott, one of the most prominent Eight Tray members of that era, and in the oral history gathered from dozens of OGs who lived through it. A brother of a Rollin 60s member was killed by someone connected to the Eight Trays. That is how it started. One death, one family's grief, one community's demand for a response. But in the vacuum left by Raymond Washington's murder just months before, that one death had no political mechanism to contain it. No authority figure who could sit both sides down. No respected OG whose word carried enough weight to pause the clock before retaliation became inevitable. The Rollin 60s retaliated. The Eight Trays responded, and within months, what had been a neighborhood dispute became the foundational conflict of all of South Central Los Angeles. The split that changed everything here is what made this war different from every other gang conflict in Los Angeles history. It did not stay between two sets. It consumed an entire world. As the Rollin 60s and Eight Trays went deeper into conflict, every other Crip set in South Central faced an impossible political reality. The two sets were demanding that everyone around them declare a position. You were either with the Rollin 60s, which meant aligning with what would become known as the Neighborhood Crip car, or you were with the Eight Trays, aligning with what would become the Gangster Crip car. Neutral was not a viable option. In a world where reputation is the only currency and violence is the primary enforcement mechanism, staying neutral reads as weakness, and weakness invites targeting from both sides. Set by set, gang by gang, South Central divided. The Rollin 40s went neighborhood. The Rollin 90s went neighborhood. The East Coast Crips aligned the neighborhood. Dozens of sets across the city locked into a permanent political identity based on which side they chose in this single conflict. The Eight Trays side, the Gangster Crip car, built its own network. The Hoover Crips, who refused to join either faction and eventually left the Crip name entirely, became enemies of both. The Grape Street Crips in Watts aligned with the Gangster Crip car, creating a connection that would have consequences for decades. By 1981, documented in federal law enforcement reports from that era, the internal structure of Los Angeles Crip gang politics had been permanently redrawn around a single axis: neighborhood versus gangster, a division created by two sets in one war that nobody not lapped, not federal prosecutors, not social workers, not community organizers, has ever been able to undo. The war on the ground. What did this war actually look like on the ground? The Rollin 60s versus Eight Tray conflict was not a series of organized military engagements. It was daily, constant, grinding drive by shootings on Hoover Street between 60th and 83rd. A span of barely 20 blocks became so frequent that residents developed habits around them. Which side of the street to walk on? Which direction to run when the sound started? When to get your children inside? Schools in the corridor between the two territories reported attendance drops. Parents kept children home on days when the tension spiked. Teachers at Jefferson High School, which sat in the contested middle ground, described a daily reality that bears no resemblance to what most Americans imagine public education to look like. Monster Cody Scott Andre Roscoe Williams, who became one of the most documented Eight Tray members of that era, described in his autobiography a period of almost constant combat, not metaphorical combat, literal, the kind involving weapons, injuries, and death, happening in the same neighborhoods where families were trying to live ordinary lives around it. The Rollin 60s, despite being the younger set when the war started, proved to be an exceptionally organized fighting force. Their territory held. Their membership grew in part because the war itself attracted young men looking for the structure and belonging that the gang offered. The Eight Trays matched them. And the war between these two sets produced casualties on both sides that, when researchers later compiled the numbers, revealed a death toll that would have constituted a public health emergency in any other context. Inside the prison system, the war continued. Members from both sets brought their loyalties behind bars. The Neighborhood versus Gangster Crip division became embedded inside California state prisons, adding another layer to the already complex prison gang politics that La M and the Aryan Brotherhood were navigating simultaneously. The war had become structural, self-sustaining, something that no longer required active decision-making to continue. It continued on its own momentum, fueled by grief, by reputation, by the need to respond to the last attack before the next one came. The federal dimension. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, federal law enforcement had begun to understand something that local authorities had been slow to recognize. The Rollin 60s, in particular, had developed a level of organizational sophistication that went well beyond simple territorial defense. Federal prosecutors, building cases through the 1990s and 2000s, documented a set that had imposed order on its own criminal enterprises, developed communication systems, and built a network that extended beyond South Central into other cities and other states. The Rollin 60s were not just a gang. Federal indictments described an organization with leadership structures, internal discipline, and criminal operations that RICO statutes designed for organized crime were eventually applied to. The Eight Trays faced similar federal scrutiny. Their members, arrested and imprisoned over decades of conflict, carried the gangster Crip identity into the California prison system, where it intersected and sometimes collided with the La M political structure that controlled drug distribution inside those facilities. What had started as a neighborhood dispute over a single death in 1979 had become, 20 years later, a component of a criminal ecosystem that federal prosecutors needed organized crime statutes to properly address. The war had grown from the streets into the courts, and from the courts into the federal prison system, and from the federal prison system through the network of connections that incarcerated men maintain with the outside world back onto the streets. The cycle had become its own perpetual machine. The legacy, more than 40 years after the first shots were fired between the Rollin 60s and the Eight Trays, here is what the documented record shows. Both sets are still active. Both sets still claim their original territory. The Neighborhood versus Gangster Crip division that their war created still defines the political landscape of South Central Los Angeles gang life. The Rollin 60s lost one of their most famous members in 2019. Rapper Nipsey Hussle, shot dead in front of his own store on Slauson Avenue. His murder, committed by a man with no direct connection to the Eight Tray conflict, nonetheless illustrated something permanent: that the territory Nipsey came from, the set he represented, the identity he carried, all of it existed within a world that the 1979 war had shaped. The Eight Trays have had their own succession of federal cases, their own members lost to prison sentences, their own next generation inheriting a conflict whose origin most of them have never fully been taught. What the Rollin 60s versus Eight Tray war ultimately demonstrates is something that appears repeatedly in the history of organized violence. The specific incident that starts a war, one death, one retaliation, matters far less than the structural conditions that turn that incident into something permanent. Raymond Washington tried to hold the Crip world together. His death removed the structural pressure that was keeping the fires contained. The Rollin 60s and Eight Trays provided the spark, but the fuel, the poverty, the isolation, the absence of alternative institutions, the presence of an economy built on crack cocaine, that fuel had been building for decades before anyone fired the first shot. And it is still there today. The Rollin 60s and the Eight Trays. Two Crip sets. One war, a fracture that redrew the entire political map of South Central Los Angeles and has never been repaired. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the Neighborhood versus Gangster Crip split could have been prevented? Or was it inevitable the moment Raymond Washington died? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see the discussion. And here is your question for this week. Which set do you think has had the bigger long-term impact on California gang politics, the Rollin 60s or the Eight Trays? Make your case below. If this video gave you something real, a story you had not heard told this way before, share it. This channel exists to go deeper than the headlines. Every share puts this story in front of someone who needs to understand it. Subscribe if you have not already. Turn on notifications so you never miss a documentary. This is Gangster Chronicles, and I will see you in the next one.